All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. Today, we are going to be ending the reign of Napoleon. All right, so this is truly the end of the French Revolution era, okay? The end of the Napoleonic era. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the objectives today. So, we're going to analyze the attack on Russia by Napoleon. We're going to see what he did right, what he did wrong, things like that. We're going to examine the significance of his loss at the Battle of Waterloo. Why was that so famous, and why is that the name attached to him so much nowadays? Um, and lastly, we're going to create an argument on whether Napoleon should be judged as a good emperor or is he a bad emperor? Okay, so let's go ahead and get to the warm up. So, the first question asks you, what do you notice Napoleon doing? What is he doing? All right. Now, the second question asks you to make a prediction. Who is the other guy? What country does he represent? What do you think? Do you think it's like Germany? Do you think it's Britain? Do you think it's Spain, Portugal? And then why do you think that? You know. So go ahead, pause the video, and write your response because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right. So you might remember from last week, I was telling you guys how Napoleon basically was, taking over Europe, with this quick, fast, uh, pretty impressive victories. His basically marrying different countries, like, hey, your nephew is gonna marry my niece, things like that, la la la. They unite through that way, or basically like either you know, surrender or I take over you. So the countries that stood in his way were mainly like Britain and Russia. Now Napoleon, being the egotistical person he is, like, oh, I can beat anybody. He decides to focus on Britain, try to invade Britain. But the thing is, the waters to get to Britain were pretty rough, and not only that, but Britain, they're an island. They would have, it would be kind of like duh, that they would have an amazing navy, and they did have an amazing navy. So the navy knew how to train in those waters. They knew how to handle them, whereas the French navy didn't really, you know. But if they did, they weren't as experienced as the British navy. So that plan went away. So Napoleon goes, okay, you know what? Instead of that, let's focus on Russia. So he, on June 24th, 1812, pay attention to the date because this is important. He takes 600,000 troops across the Niemen River and they go into Russia. And the thing is, they're doing battles here and there. Russian soldiers, citizens, they're fleeing, they're retreating, they're going more in towards Russia. Now, Napoleon just keeps going and going and going and going. September 7th is a pretty big day because at this particular battle, the French and Russian army meet. They fight. The French win, but they lost quite a bit of men, 30,000. So September 14th, if you notice again, the start date was June 24th. Now we're in September. They arrive in Moscow, and what happens is the Russians actually burn down like majority of Moscow because they figured, well, you know what? Why give them shelter? Why give them these buildings? When they come through here, burn it. We can't use them. They shouldn't either. And so that's what they did. So anything that was there burned. So there's no shelter in September in Russia. Now, if you don't know, it's very cold in Russia. It can get extremely cold during the middle of the winter area. So what happens is, after 5 weeks, France is basically waiting for Russia to surrender. They're like, they can't hold out any longer, but the Russians can. And so, ill-equipped, because remember, these guys, the soldiers, are dressed up for like summertime. They're not prepared for the winter, especially the really harsh Russian winter. Um, with not many provisions left, food and things like that, water, um, they basically turn back. They retreat. Um, and then by the time they get back to the Niemen River on December 13th, they only have 40,000 soldiers left. The 560,000 soldiers between June 24th and December 13th, they had died either in battle, of the cold, disease, starvation, whatever. So it was a pretty humiliating, I wouldn't say defeat, but it was pretty bad for France. So again, this brings me to the next part, because I said, like I just said, I wouldn't call it a defeat because France did, conquer, but because of their ill-equippedness, they had to retreat. So would you say Napoleon's attack on Russia was a success or not? Like I said, they charged through, they beat them and just kept conquering, 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 but because they weren't prepared for the winter and things like that, and they didn't plan for the fighting to be going on this long. Um, do you think this was a success? Yes or no? Do you think France, Napoleon could say, you know what, we beat the Russians? Do you think he could really say that? Yes or no? Okay, so pause the video, um, and because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right, so the defeat in Russia led to an uprising all over Europe because basically now people know, oh, he's hurting. They've been out in battle for so long. Those soldiers that are back, those 40,000, they're probably just torn up and beaten down. So all these other places that basically Napoleon conquered, they start attacking him. They start taking France. And Paris is eventually captured in 1814. Now, what happens is Napoleon is exiled to the island of Elba, which is in the northwest coast of Italy. Okay, um, Louis the 16th, his brother Louis the 18th becomes the new king of France. Now the thing is, he did not get much support from the people. He kind of came in, and people were like, "Yeah, you suck, dude. Yeah, we don't like you." Um, And also, Napoleon didn't like being in exile. He was he didn't like being on a private island. He didn't like being contained. He felt like, I am the true emperor and stuff like that. So what happened is he planned his escape and he escaped back to France. Okay, so it just went from the island to France. Um, and the thing is that when the new king heard, oh, Napoleon escaped, he sent out some troops to go towards the coast area to capture him, kill him, whatever that had to be done. So the soldiers do find him, and they're coming up to him and things like that. He sees them coming to him, and what he does, he basically gets his shirt, he rips open. He goes, "Soldiers of the Fifth Regiment, I am your emperor. If there's a man among you who would kill his emperor, here I am." And these guys, these soldiers, are like, yeah, we kind of like you better anyway. So their response is in French, long live the emperor. And he basically does like a kind of like a, I would say, comeback tour in a sense. He's going through France and people are letting people see him on his horse, just, I'm back. And people are cheering for him. Yes, yes, come back, thank you, and things like that. So March 20th, 1815, he returns to Paris just as like the emperor that he believes that he truly is, deep down in the heart, the great emperor. When news spreads that he is back in Paris in control, Russia, Britain, Austria, and Prussia all basically said, you know what, let's get back together. Let's end this once and for all. So Napoleon now is like, I need an army, I need soldiers. He raised another army. People signed up, um, and they rallied behind him. They were like, yeah, you're our dude. So even though he lost to the British. He didn't capture Britain. He didn't capture Russia. They still saw him as like, hey, this is our man. So here's your next question. Make a prediction on who do you think Napoleon is going to attack now? Is he going to attack Russia, which is in the green? Is he going to attack Austria, which is in the white? Um, uh, yeah, Austria, Prussia, so which is in the gray, or Britain, which is in the red? Which one do you think he's going to attack first? And why did you pick that country? Okay, so again, it's just a prediction. You don't have to look up on Google or anything. Just who do you think and why? Based off the map, who do you think he's going to attack first and why? All right. So pause the video because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right. So what happens is on June 18th, 1815, um, there's a very important battle at Waterloo. It's in Belgium. What happens is Napoleon is basically trying to take over certain areas. And what happens is this Duke of Wellington, who's leading the British Army, um, he basically, in a sense, kind of picked his area where he wanted to fight, which was a specific area in Waterloo. Right? There's a ridge and things like that, and there's kind of like murky land and things like that. And what happens is he sets up and he knows Napoleon's going to be there. Now, the thing is, the Prussian army, they're not there yet with the British, but they're coming. And what happens is Napoleon's trying to fight. He's trying to shoot cannons, but the thing is, because the British are on a ledge, on a kind of like a hill, um, the cannonballs are not really hitting them, you know. And Wellington does a little trick where he makes the French think that they're retreating, so the soldiers come up, but then there's soldiers right behind the other side that the French soldiers couldn't see, and then they just basically just mowed through them. Um, it is a humiliating defeat, and later on in the battle, the Belgian army does come in and they flank the French army, and he's defeated. It's a bad defeat, very very bad. But see now this time he's exiled to St. Helena. Now St. Helena is not near France. It's actually near. It's actually at the where Africa is. If you imagine the bottom of Africa, it's a little to the west of that. It's a tiny little place, but they're like, now we're going to really put you out there. And Napoleon's, if he has any thought of, oh, I'm going to come back, the people are going to love me. No, the people are like, no, dude, you had your chance, and you lost. So he remained in exile until his death in 1821. And the thing is, his legacy kind of haunts French politics for decades. We shouldn't let generals be in charge. You shouldn't give them too much power because they're going to think they're chingon. They think they're going to be all big headed and stuff like that, that they're never wrong. So, yeah. So here's your next question. With the humiliating loss at Waterloo, what do you think was the worst thing to Napoleon? Do you think that no country fearing him anymore? You think that it's really bugging his mind, that his people don't believe in him anymore? Do you think that really bugs him? That he never actually conquered a major power, that he never really conquered Britain or Russia. Do you think that haunted him? Or do you think that the people basically like exile him again? This time they're there, this time they're like, no. The first time they didn't try to rescue him. The second time now they're like, no, you stay there. You make sure you stay there. We don't want you back. Do you think that's what hurt him, that the people don't want him anymore? So again, which one do you think to Napoleon was the worst thing? Knowing how his ego is, that he's Chingon, he's, the emperor that everyone needs and wants. So again, with these four things, which one do you think he was like, this is this sucks. Like this is the worst one, you know. So why do you believe it? Be sure you explain, okay? And pause the video because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so here is your final question, your exit ticket. Remember, pick one of these. What could Napoleon have done different on his attack in Russia? What do you think? Now knowing what you know and hearing what you know, or hearing the lecture, what could he have done different? Okay. The second one is, why is Napoleon's loss at Waterloo so important? Why is that one like so connected to him now? So anytime you tell somebody what's a battle that Napoleon fought in, the only one people remember is Waterloo. No other battles, no other victories he had, just his last loss, Waterloo. And the last question is, would you say Napoleon was a good emperor or bad emperor? Now think about last week too, with his Napoleonic codes and things like that, with the directory trying to say, hey, we want you to contain the people, because they're going to go against us. And he goes, no, we can't do that against the people. But also think of the other stuff too. Him basically naming himself emperor, taking on all of Europe. So again, do you think he was a good king, king, the emperor, or bad emperor? Okay. So that's it. Hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed this. All right. So you guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you later.